Nice. Hello, everybody. Let's see. Do I have enough volume here? Check, check, check. Check. Yes, there we go. I think that's good. Hello, everybody. ELR 360 Live. Today, like every Sunday, we will be talking. Everybody Loves Raymond, keeping the spirit of Everybody Loves Raymond alive. This is Tom Caltabiano as a writer on Everybody Loves Raymond for all 9 seasons. I took 30,000 behind-the-scene photos. We published a book called Everybody Loves Raymond, Our Family Album. And every week we are exploring everything you could possibly want to know about Everybody Loves Raymond. Thank you all, great fans, for joining. Hello, Gil. Gil, we have to, in the writer's room, we had an experiment between Oreo cookies and Hydrox. I know if you're in the UK, you might not know, hello, Plymouthing, you might not know Hydrox. And we had an argument about which is better. And I have discovered Jammy Dodgers and all of these other type of cookies. So I think we have to do British, I think you don't call them cookies there, though. We have to do an on-air test of them. Hello, hello from Jersey. Nice. New Jersey, my home. And I, yes, thank you. Hello, hello, fans. Hello, Florida. Hello, Australia. Hello, Australia, yes. United Kingdom, Australia, India. Hello, the international fans. Hello, Croatia. Hello, in Japan. How do we know you are in Japan, indeed? Wow, Cape May, great. Southern New Jersey, for those of you who don't know. Hello from Pasadena, not that far away. Oh, boy. Hello, Teresa. You are listening with your husband, Raymond. Convenient. Very convenient. I'm very excited because we will have this week guest Susan Varon. As you know, plays Suzy. That was easy, so she could remember the name at Nemo's. And somebody just pointed out that I'm an old friend of Ray's. That is true. I met Ray about 6 years before Everybody Was Raymond. And Susan has known Phil Rosenthal for almost, I would say, longer. Hello, Susan.
Hi.
Great. It's great to see you. And for those of you just joining, who have never been here before, I'm Tom Caltabiano, writer on Everybody Loves Raymond. And every other week or so, we try and bring somebody. Yes, people are waving. People are greeting you, Susan. We try and bring somebody from the show, associated with the show. And usually, and again, if you have, Susan, a lot of appearances in other things, which you do, this is something that happened 25 years ago, but for the fans, for the international fans, they watch it so many times that it's much more prevalent in their minds than it might be in yours. So we're going to have to jog your memory and see if you can remember, yes, all the way back then. So, Susan, where am I talking to you? That's not a complete sentence, but
you don't mean my back bedroom. You mean in what state am I?
Yeah, no, I'm impressed that you have a back bedroom. What state?
I'm in New York City. I'm in the heart of Manhattan. I'm right by Washington Square Park in NYU.
Oh, and I went to NYU, which you probably don't know. Yeah. But this is going to get into your history because unlike you, I was a finance and management major and went right into comedy after I graduated. So you, and we're going to let you tell the story, perhaps might have been more in the acting field where you ran into somebody named Phil Rosenthal and also Monica Rosenthal. So
and Tom McGowan.
And Tom McGowan. Yeah, I don't want to spoil. Yeah, I don't want to spoil all the reveals, but for those of you, again, international audience, Hofstra University is a place in Long Island. Long Island looks like a little peninsula going out, even though it is an island, right? Going out from Manhattan. And so let's go back. Let's go and indulge us, Susan, because you are one of the most rarefied guests in that you knew Phil when, and you're in the acting field. So there's only a handful, but tell me about how you even wanted to get into acting and how you wind up at Hofstra.
My grandfather was a professional actor. He was on Broadway and he was in films. He was, they could take note of him. He was in Clute. He had a very interesting scene with Jane Fonda where she was in this gown and she's talking to this older man, a garment worker, and it's a very interesting little scene in Clute. I always wanted to be an actress my whole life. I think I wanted to be a ballerina, but I gave that up. I gave those hopes up very early. And I went to Hofstra mostly because my parents didn't want me, they didn't want me far away. I wanted to go to Carnegie Mellon. I had gotten a scholarship to go there, but I ended up going to Hofstra because I could commute, which I did for the first semester. But being a theater major, your hours are insane and my parents could not deal with it. So I got to start living on campus, which is what I wanted to do anyway.
And you grew up in Long Island?
Yeah, I grew up on Long Island, a little town called Albertson.
Albertson.
Very close to Mineola, New Hyde Park, Great Neck. Yeah, so I was, but the thing that was so amazing about Hofstra is that we had an undergraduate program that sort of rivaled Yale at the time. We had wonderful professors who were in their prime. I did not go to Hofstra when Phil and Monica went to Hofstra. I was there before them.
The good years.
The good years, but it was the beginning of the good years. But I kept going back and seeing all the plays and keeping in touch so that all of our generations kind of overlapped and we knew of each other. And we had a professor, Dr. Mason, who always talked about Phil and talked about Monica. I think he wanted to get them together. And the first time I worked with Phil and Monica, we did some reading at Hofstra with Brian Dennehy's brother, Ed Dennehy. And that's the first time that I think I actually was in a car with Phil and Monica. We hung out. It was a long, long time ago.
And just for the audience watching, because we're so familiar, Monica plays Amy. Monica plays Robert's girlfriend and then wife on Everose Raymond, and Monica and Phil are married and were married way before Everose Raymond. And Monica was an actress. I'm just for people to assemble this. And I want to go back even more. Clute is a gigantic, momentous film in time, and Phil actually showed it with Jane Fonda in the room at his screening room not that long ago. And so the part for your grandfather, because as you know, one of the best things to become a worker in the deli or maybe a car wash or something is to become an actor, because it's a very hard profession. And so the fact that your grandfather was an actor in a giant movie is really amazing.
And actually, when he did that film, he was already in semi-retirement. But his whole career, when he was an actor, he did other things. He was a sculptor. He was a stage manager. He did a lot of stuff. And my great uncle was considered the father of the Yiddish Arts Theater. So I got it somewhere in my blood, but my parents would have been, at that time, much happier if I had become a teacher, or, you know, they were not crazy about me pursuing this at all.
Yeah, something respectable. But I think the lineage is shocking to me, because, you know, Phil does, when I say shocking, you know, Ray did stand-up comedy. There was no stand-up comedy careers per se before Ray, you know, when he got into it. It wasn't like, oh, become an accountant like your grandfather. So do you remember talking to your grandfather at all about acting?
I do. My grandfather died when I was at Hofstra. I did get to see him perform professionally on stage, and I remember being very afraid that what if it wasn't good, and he was marvelous. So I was really happy. It was at the Mineola Theater. That was a regional theater at that time. It doesn't exist anymore. But I did talk to him, and the one thing that he would always say to me is, slow down, speak more slowly. And at that time I talked up like this. When we Long Island girls, we all talked up like this. And when I went to college, it took a long time to sort of drive the voice a little lower down. My voice is high anyway.
Yeah.
But I remember in speech class at Hofstra with our beloved Mrs. Cruz, I grew up saying things like time and dog and now, and a lot of glottal shock, which I didn't even know what it was.
Yeah. So for people in Serbia, I'm saying hello to Serbia. Hello, Serbia. Just to yes, these are great questions. Sorry, I'm scrolling back, and you will get used to it, Susan, because people have a lot of questions here. First of all, just going back, for people in Serbia, there's a certain, in Croatia, I don't want to leave out anybody, or even Australia would identify. There's a certain accent where Susan grew up, where I grew up. So I grew up in New Jersey. So the words that catch me are, hey, is that your dog? Do you want some coffee? It's a very specific thing. Ray has it in spades, and it's not going away because I don't hear anything in your, and I'm assuming because you're a trained actor that it went away and it can come back if you need it. It's because it limits your roles if you sound like you're, a certain way. So now let's go back again. First of all, your grandfather's name, a lot of people asking that.
Morris Strasberg. No relation to Lee Strasberg. My mother wanted me to take Strasberg as a professional name, but there was Lee Strasberg's daughter, Susan Strasberg, so I couldn't do it, and I kept my.
Yeah, and just for those, Lee Strasberg, I believe, was in The Godfather. Hyman Roth is his character, so he was a giant in the industry, in the acting industry. Strasberg is like saying, "I'm going to sing. I know that Sinatra seems like a good name. Let me use that name." So,
right, but no relation.
Right. But it would be a giant, almost like where Nick Cage goes, I know my name is Coppola. I'm going to try and do it without that name. So,
and my great grand uncle's name was Maurice Schwartz, who's a pretty big name in the hierarchy of the Yiddish theater. I don't speak Yiddish, by the way. So, okay. That whole world was not particularly open to me at all.
Okay. So anyone requesting that Susan just rifle off some Yiddish, please hold those requests. Why was okay, boy, very aggressive questioning here. Wow, this is great, Susan. Yes, because again, we're going to get back to your story. When I see these questions, and I was talking to Ray about it the other day, the depth of thought about the show is phenomenal. So the fan sites where they get into these questions is great because when we're writing the show, for example, or you're acting, you're coming in, you're doing what is on the page and bringing something to it. But leading into this question, why don't they expand Suzy's role? Why don't they expand anybody's role? So Harriet Lichtman, why doesn't anybody's role? And as Phil explained it for those of you just joining, this is Tom Caltabiano. I'm talking to Susan Varon, who went to college with Phil Rosenthal, who created Everett Raymond. You can only service so many characters. And even if Susan comes in as the waitress, and her job is not to be make such a mark that you're like, okay, can we get to the part of the scene that we need? Because we get that you're talented, we get that you're great. It's not what we need from you right now. So from the show's perspective, and Ray and I as novices, we'd be like, ooh, this is a funny character. Let's explore this, and Kevin James, for example, was in. But the audience loves their characters. So you have to be very judicious. So it never has anything to do with a person's talent, whether you write. It's just that Suzy from Nemo's, you can't write a 7-episode arc about it because Doris Roberts is going to go, Phil, I noticed that Susan, who you went to college with, has gone. So anyway, let's go back, Susan, because these are great questions. That was answering a very specific question. You decide to go to Hofstra, right, which is a great program. And for those of you that don't know, Yale is considered a pinnacle, and Amy Aquino was on here. But Hofstra had a
But Yale
phenomenal.
was grad school. This was undergrad.
Right, which
So that's why I make the difference. You know, we were undergrad. So to have that kind of a drama department at that time was pretty prestigious. It really was. I mean, it turned out to be so.
yeah, and the it was more of an anomaly, that quality of undergrad.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So Susan, so now let's count one of our big fans asking, do you remember just the first time you met Phil?
I have a feeling, well, I saw Phil in a play at Hofstra. I'm sure of that. And so that's the first time I saw him and we were introduced and we met, but we already knew of each other because, as I say, the generations interspersed. But Phil and Tom McGowan and I and Monica did a play together, and that really solidified we've been friends for a long time anyway, you know, working at various and sundry jobs and all that stuff, and auditioning here and doing this and then doing that. But doing this one play with Phil and Monica and Tom, I think it definitely solidified the relationship.
Yeah, and so that's after you all graduated the play?
Yes, they were out of Hofstra's, yeah.
And where was the play?
Somebody who also went to Hofstra, Robbie Weiner, was deciding he really wanted to be a director, and he was going to grad school at Columbia. So this was a Columbia grad program project. And it was a play called Malperfect. And all I can tell you is that these kind of projects, you probably got to, you know, you're going to rehearse for a week or two, and then you did 3 or 4 performances. But we rehearsed forever, hours and hours and hours, because we loved working on it. And I can definitely say at that early time, you know, Phil's hilarious as an actor. But I could also see that he could and should be a director. There's no question about it. We spent so much time working on bits and timing and where does the laugh land, and no, should this happen off stage and you hear the clatter, or should you see the, you know, it just went on and on and on. And it was great fun. And I definitely think it was during that period of time that Phil and Monica really became an item. I think that was during those rehearsals and during that time. I think that's when they actually fell in love and, you know, became a couple.
Nice. And so, by the way, I'm not glossing over that. The Rob Weiner, who's now, is he in Texas now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I believe he's in Marfa.
Yeah. So for our Everett Raymond fans, just to share the bigger significance of what Susan is talking about, Phil had a great ability to direct what was a play, in that it's Everybody Loves Raymond is a play that is done in front of a live audience. And so many times, and Susan saw it when she, you know, obviously before Raymond, but we witnessed it every day on the set of Raymond, where on a normal show where someone who isn't as good as Phil, let's just, you know, obviously there's other really good shows out there, but you would see a scene and it wouldn't work necessarily. And another show would be like, okay, let's go back and rewrite that. Sorry, everybody, let's go rewrite that. But Phil would take maybe 30 minutes and go, Doris, when you come in, maybe can just pause for a second, then look at Peter. Okay, and he would redo the entire blocking of the scene in front of us, and it was excruciatingly slow. And then they would run the scene, and all of a sudden, the scene that was poorly written and didn't work was a great written, well-written scene that was phenomenal. And we saw it over and over again, not taking anything away from the directors, but Phil just was locked into this show. And the significance, the bigger significance is, instead of when Susan's talking about rehearsal, now, instead of all of a sudden the actors get all new words the next day, they're now living with the same material, and they can inhabit the space of their characters much better if you live with the material for 5 days versus we have 2 hours to learn these lines. So the ripple effect is huge, and I think that theater aspect of a multi-camera sitcom, All in the Family, you know, Friends, Everett Raymond, that comes out in spades when you have someone like Phil directing. So which
I love the way you articulate it. It's so
yeah.
true.
Well, I did it better than Phil would have, talking about himself, because it's hard to talk about yourself.
I need
But
a cup like that. I need
well,
that.
you know, if you want, I can talk to Phil, and you can probably get a 6 to 7% discount when you order it.
Thanks.
Yeah,
That's great.
yeah. So Susan, you touched upon it, but odd jobs, and Phil recounts a lot of odd jobs. But what were your jobs? Because you didn't land a giant part, and now all of a sudden you're a multimillionaire right off the bat, right? You had to maybe like
No, that
every other
never
actor.
happened. I had, well, let's see. I was a lousy cocktail waitress. I was a mediocre restaurant waitress. I was a miserable Wall Street during lunch hour rush waitress. I sold magazine subscriptions. I sold theater tickets. I have a good phone voice, so I could do things on the phone pretty well. I worked at a panty company. I typed badges for the New York Coliseum gift show, and I'm not a very good typist. I had other typing jobs where
you didn't. So, and all these are while you're acting. So Phil also.
It's always to give yourself the flexibility so that you can leave to go to an audition. So you're usually taking a job where you know what your shift is, or you're working a job where you get paid by the hour, and you say to them, I'm going to leave for my lunch hour, and it might be 2, but I'll make up and they're like, sure, go on. You know, you have to be well liked wherever you go. As a waitress, everybody loved me because I wanted to give my shifts to everybody else, because not my shifts, but my I would say, take this table, take this table, take this table. And all the other better waiters would go, fine. They'd make more money, but I felt like I could handle the little bit that I would do.
Right.
And then I got a part-time job in a theatrical advertising agency, which was amazing. And I felt at least like I was part of the Broadway community. And I also got a part-time job, as many Hofstra people did, at the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Oh.
I was not a guard like Phil. I was at the front information desk, and it was one of the better people watching jobs that I've ever had it was a great job. It was a great part-time job, and I loved it, and I thrived.
Sorry, just for people who are watching who want to get into the business, what Susan just said, if you're adjacent, even if you're not doing what you want to do, and if you want to come out and make TV or movies, if you're getting someone coffee, but it's on the set of a show, that's much better than you have a much better job in an accounting firm, because you're not even close to the action. And so that kind of makes sense to me. And I'm going to, for anybody who has the ability to get Phil's book, You're Lucky You're Funny, he recounts some of his guard stories, I believe, in there. So, yes, which are hysterical. And yeah.
Yes. I know that he also worked, I'm pretty sure he worked as a deli guy for a while. This was before the Met, because we used to go there and we would make sure that, he'd make the sandwiches for us. I mean, everybody has to have a community somehow, especially if you're a struggling out of work actor, because you're always saying to somebody, I need a part-time job. Do you know anybody who died or left or is on vacation? And so you're always trying to help each other. And a lot of times you're doing things that you're not very good at, but sometimes you score and you do okay and live there for a while.
Yeah. So then what do you remember your first acting, where you actually got paid for acting?
Well, I started getting work on a soap opera. A friend from college, from Hofstra, was working in a casting office, and she spoke to the casting director at One Life to Live, Mary Jo Slater, the great Mary Jo Slater, who let me audition and gave me a little bit of work. And then for a while I was doing a lot of voiceovers, as well as what they call under 5 without lines and under 5 with lines. And an under 5 without line on a soap opera means that you don't have any lines, but you're standing next to one of the leads. So you need makeup and hair like everybody. It's really a very interesting thing. Or you have a couple of lines.
Yeah.
But the voiceover that I started to do for One Life to Live, because I had a lot of doctor sets. So it would be like, Dr. Scott, please pick up the phone. I actually did that for 2 or 3 years on a freelance basis, but I supported myself.
By the way, Susan, can we go back when you're walking for the first time onto that soap opera set? What is that like?
I have to tell you, the first time that I worked on the set, I was an under 5 without lines, which meant that I dusted the furniture and then handed a cup of tea to the actress, I can't think of her name, Slazak. She was fantastic. And it was a huge horseshoe set, one end to the other, and a big horseshoe. And the camera started on me, dusting and plumping the pillows. And then I handed the coffee, and then I continued. And then the whole action went to the other side of the horseshoe, but I didn't know. And so I was dusting and plumping and acting, and all of the stagehands are laughing at me until they say cut. And the stage manager comes over and he said, Susan, the camera's only on you until, and it goes on your hands, passing the cup of coffee, then you can stop acting.
Right.
See, the lights are they're not so hot on you anymore. And it was like, oh. And then I watched it and I thought, oh my goodness. So that's what it was like. But, you know, you learn as you go.
Yeah.
You don't
You could have said to them, listen, I want this place to be spotless. I mean, it is on TV. You know, I can't let all this be under my watch.
I never did stand up and comedy writing like you. So all those things,
okay.
all those things come like 3 minutes later, too late.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I know
yeah, you might have been asked to leave had you been a wise ass. So
maybe.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm reading these questions. When you did get into that, how long had you been trying to break into the industry? So before that soap opera.
I also was doing off Broadway shows where you don't get any money, or they pay you $10 for the whole time.
Right.
And then I got my equity card, which is the union for stage acting. And I was desperate to get my equity card because that's what I was trained in, what I really wanted to do. And I got that by getting a 6-month job at Jiva Theater in Rochester, New York, where we did 3 original plays in rep and taught workshops.
And in rep means what? In rep means what?
It means that you have 3 separate plays that you've rehearsed and they're all ready to go. And you do one of them on one day and one of them on another and one of them, and then you switch them back and forth. So they rotate. Right.
And sorry. And for those of you not familiar, perhaps if you're in Serbia, Rochester is very far away from Manhattan. So it's New York, but it might as well be on the other side. It's probably further away.
8-hour drive.
8-hour drive. So you're not exactly in the heart of show business at that point, not to take away from it.
Not at all, but you are a union actor. If that's what is important to you, it's very exciting. But we taught all kinds of workshops from ages kindergarten through high school. So that was part of the deal. You were always doing your short plays and then workshops and then discussions with the audience. It was, an outreach program. But it got me my equity card and, a lot of, you get a lot of legs that way.
Yeah, it's awesome. And one of our fans from Rochester, United Kingdom, says, I appreciate that. And also one of our fans from Rochester, New York, appreciates that. So there you go.
And Rochester's very beautiful, very beautiful.
Yes.
Spring, Eastman School of Music. It was a great place to be. Once the spring, I was there for the winter through the spring. And once the spring came, I understood why people love Rochester because it's glorious.
And as a photographer, Kodak is up there.
Yes.
And for those of you that are young, that is a film. Okay. So now, Susan, you at least start. You get your equity card, which is huge. You and Laurence Olivier are side by side, and you're standing practically
like this.
That close, yes, that close. So now you're still after that 6-month thing goes, and by the way, you're thrown on the road. Do you know anybody else that you're acting with up there?
There were only 6 people in the cast, and my best friend, who I actually shared an apartment with at that time, 3 men and 3 women. I was one of the women and he was one of the men. So we actually got to, and we were not romantically involved, but we shared a studio for 6 months to save money,
Yes.
because we went to college. We all went to college together. We all went to Hofstra. So that was, I lucked out, but no, I didn't know anybody else, but I did know Jay, and that was pretty amazing and
awesome.
Lucky.
Yeah. And so for people that are just watching, who a lot of times in Hollywood, I hear the best advice is get 9 roommates, come out, and anything to not give up the dream to do it, because most people don't have money. And the thing is, your spirit gets broken because acting is nonstop rejection all the time. Really, to the day you die, you are possibly rejected. I know Phil recently showed Tootsie, and Dustin Hoffman was 30 when he got The Graduate. And so that's a long time when your friends are buying houses and getting married and moving on, and all of a sudden you're struggling. So just because we have so many Raymond fans, let's go back to Phil a little bit. And when you first hear of Everybody Loves Raymond coming into being.
Well, I had already been in California, and been working on several shows that Phil had been working on. He often wrote for his friends, and he wrote for me, and all the other shows like Down the Shore and Yes Dear, and not Yes Dear, that was not Phil, but that was Alan Kirschenbaum.
Right.
I had to audition. Phil would say, he had worked with a partner, Oliver Goldstick. We wrote you a part, but you have to audition for it. So there's no guarantees, and just don't screw up. Do a good job. When Everybody Loves Raymond came along, we had heard what was going on with developing, and this seemed to be happening. Phil came to me and he said, I have something for you. It's small. Come in, say a couple of lines, get a laugh, and leave. But it's yours if you want it. And I was like, woo! So it's the first time that I didn't have to audition for something.
Yeah.
It was huge.
Which is awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. And so just for everybody, a lot of times someone will say, you don't have to read. Don't read. You're not going to read for this part, rather. If someone's of a certain caliber, and the story is that Patricia Heaton was sitting there making small talk to Ray and Phil when they were auditioning her, and they had been told she won't read. And so Patty is going, when are they going to ask me to read? I got to go already, And so, she's like, can we get going? And he's like, oh, you'll read? And she's like, yeah, of course I'll read. So even if you're of the highest caliber of you're working all the time, and you're even in any magnitude of a part, you really do have to audition, because you don't know that person, we had some people who came in, got the part, and then we had to replace them after the first table read, even though they were great, but not great for that part. So it's not necessarily an indication of like, we don't think you're talented enough, so you're going to have to audition. It's just we know what we want to hear, the way it was written, and if you can't nail it, it has nothing to, Ray was on news radio for 1 day. He got fired after the table read. So, and he did okay after that, but it doesn't mean he's talented. So then the show gets picked up, right, which is huge news. And then Phil says, listen, you have this part. You don't have to read for it, which is great. And then do you remember the first time walking onto your friend Phil's set?
Your heart is bursting. Yes, it's Phil's set. And it's also Monica, Phil and Monica. And one of my best friends, Elizabeth Herring's dialogue coach. It blows your mind. It blows your mind. I mean, I had watched Phil working over a short amount of time, really, doing all these different shows. And, you know, a lot of times things don't get picked up. A lot of things they don't go as far as you'd like them to go. It was a breathtaking experience, and I was, you know, made to feel as if I was a member of the cast every time I was there. It really was extraordinary. I'm getting goosebumps talking
Well,
about it. And also
and
to see Phil in that position, you know. Sorry, I cut
yeah.
you off.
No. That first year, just for people that are just joining, Everett Raymond was number 83 in the ratings at the end. And at one point, I think we were 106 in the ratings. And I think there were only like 110 shows. So it didn't look that promising. We filmed on a stage 3/8 on the Hollywood Center studio, Hollywood Center stages studio. And that was right next to where I Love Lucy first started, which was stage 2 on Hollywood Center Studios. Although it was called General Studios back then. So when you're going, what you're alluding to is you hope it lasts, and you are in the I Love You episode, which is the first episode filmed after the pilot. So the pilot.
The amazing pilot.
Yeah. The pilot was shot, I believe, in March. So now we're talking August, end of July, August, where the first episode. So for those of you not familiar, you shoot a pilot. They shoot a ton of pilots, and the network decides what they're going to put on the air. And so if they shoot, let's say, 16 pilots, they might put 3 on the air. So Everett Raymond made it, and now Susan is coming onto the set of the show that her friend has created, and it's the first episode, which is great that he got you in the first episode. And Tom McGowan. Yeah. So Tom McGowan plays Bernie, everybody. I know we're so familiar, Susan. I just try and frame stuff. So
Yeah.
Tom McGowan, who's a phenomenal actor, also went to college at Hofstra. So there's Susan on the set with Tom, which must have been surreal in addition to Phil.
Well, it was less surreal because it becomes familiar. You're suddenly there and you're looking at a face you know, that you've acted with before, that you admire and like. So it went from surreal to comfortable and like it at home.
Yeah. And then do you remember watching it for the first time, the I Love You episode, when it premiered?
I guess. I don't know. What was going through my mind as you just asked me that is, I only heard this through the grapevine, but in that first episode, they wanted me to have a cigarette dangling out of my mouth. It wasn't my, you know, I wouldn't have said, hey, can I have a cigarette dangling? It wasn't like that.
Right.
You know, and they said, no, I don't have a cigarette dangling out of my mouth. It was like, okay. And I heard through the grapevine that the powers that be did not like it at all. And they wanted no more cigarette. They might not have even wanted me, the one who had the cigarette dangling out. And they're like, no, she doesn't have to have a cigarette dangling out of her mouth. It's okay.
Yeah.
So I only heard this through the whatever, but I do remember it. Yes, and I do remember, because I remember in rehearsal, they had changed the word to melanzani at the last minute. And I was like, what's that? Oh, it's eggplant. It's eggplant in Italian. Okay, melanzani. You know, that kind.
Yes.
So but I thought, yeah, I think what was so amazing, because I watched so much of it and was in a tiny bit, that it looked like what I had seen. It looked like what I had been watching, and then, oh, there I am. Oh, yeah, okay. You know, that's what I remember.
Yeah. And so then, do you remember the first time when the show actually was a hit, where you go, oh, wait a minute, this is gonna, because there's the two aspects, Susan. You want your friend to succeed, Phil, but then also you get a potential paycheck, and you get, you know, it helps your career. Everyone's career was helped by Everett Raymond, who worked on it. But
I think it just got bigger and bigger and bigger in retrospect, you know, because so many things don't work out. And I've had friends who, you know, thought they had a job and bought the apartment, and then they didn't have their job, and you know, it's happened. And I remember it being kind of slow in the beginning with Everybody Loves Raymond. You know, I remember we were doing 2 shows. Keeping the audience in their seats in the very beginning was not always easy. There were times I remember when the audience were like, we're going to go now. And it's like, well, the show isn't over. You can't, you have to stay. It was very tough. And then, but I would say certainly by the second season, you could feel that there were people in the audience. You'd hear a giggle, a titter, or whatever, and you'd say, "Oh, they know who they're watching. They know these characters."
Yeah, yeah. The show was number 86 or 83 in the ratings at the end of the first year, but they tried it on Monday nights 4 nights in a row, and that's when it popped. The very end of season 1. And so then by season 2, it started to get a following. And by season 3, it really took off. So it took about 3 seasons to really be the hit that it became. And they only ordered, I think, 9 maybe at the beginning. And so for those of you watching, you usually do 22 is a good order of episodes per year. At one point, we did 26 episodes per year. So once the show became season 3, then you knew, Susan, that you were coming back. And so when you knew that you're going to get a couple of more episodes, would Phil call you, or were you just, your agent would just be like, are you around March 9th? Because we have an ELR offer.
That's a really good question. And Phil might say, yeah, something's coming up. Yeah, just keep, something. Don't know when. It would be like, okay. I don't think it was more than that.
Yeah.
To be honest, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and it's, by the way, just to know, so most shows, what Susan is alluding to, and I'll tell you an example. Ray was in a show after Ever's Raymond. He was in a show called Vinyl, which was on HBO.
Right.
And it had these people attached. It had the guy that wrote Boardwalk Empire. It had Mick Jagger, and it had Martin Scorsese. Okay? So fairly respectable people. I think Ray committed to an apartment, and I think, a week later the show got canceled. So you never know on any level when something, and you never know what the public will respond to also. And there's other factors that it's not even the public. It's the president of the company has been fired, and it was his project, so the project goes away. So you always, so.
And, I was a person who I had an apartment in New York. I was trying to be bi-coastal, and I was staying in California because of Everybody Loves Raymond, but I didn't really consider myself as living in California, even though I was living in California, but I was paying rent in New York as well.
Yeah.
So it gets complicated.
Yeah. So are you doing a Woody Allen thing where you would never be caught considering yourself a California, Los Angeles resident, or you were just loved in New York so much?
Well, when I first came out to California with a play, they said to us, whoever they were, I don't know, agents, and they said, don't go to California and say, I'm just here for a little while. When you go to California, you say, I'm here. I'm here. I'm here for the long run. That's what they want to hear. And so that's what you said. And that's what you did as best you could.
Yeah. Sure. You wanted to have a presence. And for those of you, pilot season, for example, does happen where this happened with Ray and Kevin James before they got cast and anything. They moved out in the spring and it was pilot season. And that's where all the shows are cast in pilot season. So there is a little window, less so now, but in the days of the network TV in the 80s and the 90s, where you have this window of 2 months and everything gets cast, every giant role gets cast. So actors camp out, and it's bizarre because a lot of times there'll be one actor will get 5 offers for a show, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're in second position for this," and then other people are staring at their phone going, I wonder if it'll ring this pilot season. So now, Susan, sorry.
Peter Boyle didn't move there for the first year. He was going back and forth. He had an apartment, I know, and a rented car, and I don't think he drove.
Yeah. Peter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ray and I lived in a place called Hillcrest Apartments, and Peter lived above us. So,
Yeah.
and we used to do laundry together. I
Uh,
remember that. Right. So then, Susan, what is it like now? The show becomes a hit, and now you're hanging out with Phil and Monica, and you're seeing these changes of, like, the Emmy nominations, the all that stuff. I mean, how great was that to see?
it's surreal is give me a better word. Give me all the hyperbole words and I'll use them. It you can't believe it, but you do believe it because you know how much blood, sweat, tears, work, love, commitment goes into it all the
Yeah.
time. And you know that there are extraordinary pressures. I do remember in the very beginning, we would do table reads where we were set up with a camera to New York with
Yeah.
Dave Letterman's production company, listening
David
to the
Letterman's,
table
yeah.
read and listening to the script and to get approval. And, that's a lot of pressure. It
Yeah.
really is. So to finally see, now you're a part of the ages, to see that kind of accolade is it's breathtaking. And, you know, Phil's a very humble guy, actually. I mean,
Yeah.
yes, we all have our egos and all that stuff, but he is who he is. He's
Yeah.
always been the same.
And so for those of you just joining, this is Tom Caltabano. I'm talking to Susan Varon. She went to college with Phil, or at the same college, a little bit before Phil. And so Phil was for the term is showrunner. And so Phil runs the show, and literally it's like a general, and there's 130 people under him. But there was a partnership with Ray. And do you remember the first time you're seeing Ray? Because you probably weren't aware of him as a stand-up unless you were going to clubs in New York.
No, I wasn't. But the minute that everything started to move forward with Everybody Loves Raymond, Ray Romano suddenly had zillions more fans than he had before because we were all watching him and rooting for him. And, he was on The Tonight Show and all this. It was like, yeah, Ray.
Yeah.
Ray Romano blew my head off, really, because I thought, how does this guy do the lead, and he's one of the writers, and how does he do it? And he's calmly on the phone talking, and then, oh, I'm sorry, I gotta go. And I really, to watch that kind of multitasking, I can't even call it multitasking, I don't know what you call it. But yeah, it was very exciting. And
I would say this because you were saying how Phil's a humble guy. Ray and Phil are two of the nicest people on the planet, and they're very, very family oriented. And so there was no drama within reason. There's always going to be some drama, which brings me to what was it like to be with Doris Roberts and Patty Heaton and Peter Boyle on the set? Do you remember any interactions with them?
Dora, I was often in the makeup trailer. One of the things that was so exciting for me is that because of my friendship with Phil, even though I was playing a small part, when I was there, I was allowed to be there as if I was the main cast, as long as I didn't get in anybody's way, touch a prop and move it or whatever. So I got to watch so much and see notes being given and all that stuff. So I would I was never in my dressing room. I was never in the green room. I was out where it was happening, whatever that was, because you learn so much. And I would put myself in the makeup room as much as I could just to watch Doris Roberts and, Peter Boyle, because they were amazing actors, these amazing character actors that I've known all my life. And I remember that Doris Roberts was very sweet when they were first doing my hair for the first episode. She said, give her a little bow in her hair and make that her bow. So it's always going to look like her hair, and that's her. And they were like, oh, okay. I mean, I couldn't ask for that. I didn't have that kind of, I was just being made up. And that was really very, very, very lovely. It really, I have to say. And Patty was, a living doll. Watched her through all her pregnancies. That was amazing. I love to go back and watch old episodes of Raymond where you see they're cutting higher and higher, and the laundry basket is fuller and fuller, and you don't even really necessarily know that she's pregnant. It was unbelievable to me.
Yeah.
And Peter Boyle was an erudite, very learned person. He was very nice. You know, we didn't have that much to do with each other. I had one scene in Nemo's with him, but he was a doll.
Yeah. In Look, Don't Touch. Yeah. Yeah. Peter, that surprises everybody. But Peter was so soft-spoken, so well-read, so intelligent, and you're expecting Frank, you know, and it's the 100% opposite.
And you know, the John Lennon connection always blew me away.
Yeah. Through Lorraine, Peter Boyle's wife, Lorraine, was a journalist and covered a lot of rock and roll, and they became friends with Yoko and John Lennon, and he was the best man at their wedding and spent a lot of time together. Yeah, I'm looking forward to when Lorraine comes in and visits. And I will say, just for you, because what Susan is talking about, when you're friends with the showrunner, that's the most powerful person. So there is a look of like, okay, and not that anybody would ever be mean to anybody, because it was such a family, such a friendly set. There was no, you know, it was as friendly a set as I've ever been on. And I've been on a few shows where you go, oh, plenty of tension to go around here. I don't know why, you know, because there is millions of dollars at stake for every episode. So there is a lot when you talk about pressure from Phil. We're talking about the very beginning of the series. When you're not a hit, everybody has an opinion and you have to defend those. Once you win a couple of Emmys, it's like, this is a very good note. We'll take it under consideration, but I may not do it. As opposed to it's, Phil, you're going to take this note and we might replace you. So that was hanging over Phil's head at the very beginning. And so once that goes away, it's a much more pleasant thing. And also it becomes a well-oiled machine. And so when you walk on set, Susan, we're like, oh, here's Susan's back this week. You know, that's awesome. And we're going to have a fun, you know, time at that set. So you wanted, by the way, I'm trying to think of it's hard to remember. There was an episode you're in that I think I wrote. Oh yeah. I wrote an episode with Ray called Deborah's Workouts.
Oh, yes.
And so I think you're in that scene as well. And I'm trying to remember because you know, a lot of people, including the actors as well, you know, Doris Roberts would be like, Tom, are you writing my Emmy episode? You're only thinking of stories. So, you know, Phil and Ray only want, what is a funny story? Nobody's thinking, how do we get Doris in more of this? How do we get Susan Varon? Nobody's really thinking that. You just want the show to be great. And then everything else flows from that. So that goes back to my point earlier on where you're like, why didn't you have, you know, this character back? It's like you have to service the story because there are look, there's almost no episodes that people, you know, let's say there's a handful that people who are watching don't love. Well, a lot of times it's because it's, you know, and again, a lot of the episodes that some people don't love, the other people love that and it's their favorite episode. But if it ever feels forced and you're watching as an audience member, that can be why on another series, let's say, where you're like, wow, this just doesn't feel organic to the show at all. And that might be, you don't know who's friends with somebody and like, we need a lot more scenes with this person. So Susan, only because this is what I was fearing, we will be running out of time because it's gone so quickly. So do you remember, have you been noticed anywhere where you're like, how did that person know me from the series? Because it runs perpetually.
I get a lot of things like, you look very familiar, but no, I don't think anyone said, you're Suzy. I mean, I have high school friends and people who saw the show and they know me and they're like, oh, I saw you. But strangers, I get, you know, you get that look, but it's a look like, I know you, and it's the worst thing when someone says, I know you, know, how do I know you? And then you say, oh, was it this, that? No. And it's like, well, you know what?
I'm out.
Maybe I look like your neighbor. I don't know. But,
I'm out. Yeah. On the guesses. Yeah. I was on the Warner Brothers set the other day and I'm looking at this guy and I felt bad because I'm like, I was just standing in between some stages talking to actually an old Raymond person. And I'm like looking at the guy and I kind of nod to him because I'm like, I feel like I should know him and I'm being rude. That was my thought. Like, uh-oh, who was, and I think it was Jason Segel. Is that his name?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's who it was. So yeah, no, sorry. I'm just
No,
like,
yeah.
okay, was it?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Uh,
do it to
uh,
people all the time.
yes. All right, Susan. And then when the show won the Emmy for the first time, do you remember even watching that or hearing that?
Of course. Well,
You-
of
I,
course, because you're sitting in your own living room watching it, but you're, maybe I was even in California. I don't know. Who was it? Patty? Did Patty win the first? Right.
So Patty, yeah, just for people watching, we never got nominated for an Emmy. So all of a sudden, Patty Heaton gets nominated for an Emmy because we thought, well, I'm endowing this with everybody's thought, but we're like, well, we're doing a good show. If we never get nominated for an Emmy, it seems funny now because I think the show was nominated for like 70 Emmys or some crazy amount. But in the first 2 years, zero, nothing. And so Patty got nominated.
I was there working that week because the day after her Emmy was at craft service. I remember it very vividly and it was beyond thrilling. Maybe I was in California then. I must have been at Phil's watching, I don't know. It's a long time ago, but
Yeah.
incredibly thrilling. And it's also it circles out your family, your friends, everybody. There's good feelings that just come in a wave over you, and it doesn't matter how big or small. I mean, my part was small, but I'm part of Everybody Loves Raymond, and it was a thrill, and it will always remain a thrill.
Yeah. I will say that feeling when Patty won, we all were like, yes, recognition. We couldn't have been happier. I'll have to look up what episode we filmed because then I'll find some
and
photos.
Also Doris, at not such a tender age, that's pretty remarkable. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Well, Doris won Emmy after Emmy after Emmy where you felt bad. There's a point where you go, oh, leave some for the other actresses. But she was so incredibly, gifted, and she inhabited that role in a way that very few other people could. Now, Susan, how do you ever catch the show on reruns now?
Sure.
And can you even remember when you're watching them and you're in it? Are you like, oh, yeah.
Oh, I know the title. I know the title. I'll look at the title and I'll go, oh, I'm in that. Yeah. My favorite episode of Raymond I'm Not In, but it's the suitcase one. What can I tell you? And also the pilot the pilot is very, very funny to me because it might as well have been my parents. Except that they loved Fruit of the Month Club. My father would always talk about the oranges, and he'd open the refrigerator. It was very, very, very funny to me. But I know the titles. Like I know Meant to Be. I'll be like, yeah. And I get such a kick out of watching Monica. I get a kick out of watching everybody, but
Yeah. So I think it's funny because Monica played Amy again for people that just joined, and you were mentioning your one professor who was a very obviously a gifted professor. And Phil once said, "Hey, would you like to go to dinner with this gentleman who taught at Hofstra?" Of course, he means nothing to me other than Phil wants me to go, and then having dinner with him. What a delightful man! And you had him, Richard. For the whole time there? Did he set up the program, or what was his?
No, he didn't set up the program, but I had him the whole time, but he remained one of my dearest friends until he died.
And sorry, there's a picture of him with Marilyn Monroe in Korea, right? I believe it's in Korea. It's on Phil and Monica's refrigerator. And it's when you see him, I mean, it's just anybody who has a picture with Marilyn Monroe is just astounding to see that, and so to see him, it's awesome. But he inspired all of you guys.
Yeah, he did. He had a great love of theater and dramatic literature and blocking and timing and craft, and he was a very very gifted director, and he was a marvelous person, and he loved his students, and he was always trying to put people together, and wanted us to support each other. And
Yeah, well, it's a tough business for anybody watching. You're seeing the people on screen and you're seeing people at red carpets and all that stuff, but that community, that support community is very, very important. And that's why if you're going to study acting, it's the same in the stand-up world, but it's not as much as a craft in the stand-up world, and you're never working with anybody else in the stand-up world. So that these people, like the fact that Tom McGowan, who played Bernie on Everett Raymond, that they're working together for life, basically, is awesome. And I do remember being at the Emmys one year, and they were both, I think Phil was nominated for writing, maybe, and Tom was nominated maybe for Frasier or something. And I thought, wow, that's got to be good to be at the Emmys at the top of your game and hear both these names called out. It's such a proud moment.
Yeah, very exciting.
All right, Susan, as I expected, we have run out of time. Is there anything else, any little thing, or do you want to say hi? I see a lot of your fans. I can't, this is back to Mike. Do we have Jaffa cakes in the U.S.? Susan, have you ever had British, I think they call them, I sound so ignorant now, they call them British biscuits or some, Jammy Dodgers, hobnobs. Yeah,
yes.
Cookie. Yeah.
Yes.
So, okay, great. At one point, you don't know this. I'm going to recount this, but Jeremy Stevens, who grew up in Brooklyn, a delightful man, he felt that the Hydrox cookie was the height of cookie flavor, and so we had a taste test in the writers' room between Oreo cookies and Hydrox, and Oreos came out on top, and Jeremy claimed that the flavor had changed since the 100 years since he had started eating those cookies. But I've just discovered these British treats. So I'm reading some of the comments. That's why I'm bringing that up.
You mean the hobnobs? I know hobnobs. I know the
hobnobs, Jammy Dodgers, Jaffa
I don't know what a
cakes.
Jammy Dodger is, but I guess it's got jam in it.
So next time, you are 100% correct. Next time you're in LA and at Phil's, I will race over there with some Jammy Dodgers, and we'll do a taste test with Phil.
You're on.
All right, Susan, always a delight, and I look forward to catching up again. I may have to have you on again. Don't block my calls. Just accept it when we talk about more in depth about specific episodes. But I hope to see you again right here.
Great.
Oh, thank you.
You're doing a marvelous job with this, by the way. It's really very exciting to see all the different areas being covered and talked about, and it's like a master class. It's a master class.
Yeah, well, Phil used to say that anybody that worked on the show was taking like a master class in how to make a show, and I felt there's 130 people that worked on Everett Loves Raymond, and it's good to hear everybody's story because, as you said, for all the hard work, all the sweat, just a little thing of a cigarette dangling could get somebody fired, or the ribbon in the hair that Doris mentions. These are all facts that you don't, little teeny things, but they all add up. And so when you're seeing a professional, a great show versus a student thing, not that students aren't talented, but you go, everybody's wearing a shade of blue. The background of the set is distracted. All these little factors go away on Everett Raymond because everybody is so professional and good. So yeah. I'm trying to tell everybody's story. And by the way, we have to solve the mystery. I met a guy who told me, hey, I know where Nemo's exterior was shot. It was in Staten Island, and they redecorated it, or they remodeled the exterior since then. I'm going to dedicate a whole show because it looks very similar to a lot of other pizza places, And of course, when you see the exterior of the Brady Bunch house, it's not what the interior was. The interior was shot on a soundstage. The Everett Raymond houses are in Long Island, and I don't think anybody from the show was there. But you can, if you look up on YouTube. Also, by the way, for those of your friends who aren't Instagram friendly, these all end up on YouTube, so they can watch on YouTube. Yeah,
that's great. Well, wasn't the facade of one of Phil and Monica's homes used in Raymond? That was one of the
Phil and Monica's real life homes?
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, it wasn't Deborah and it wasn't Frank.
Not the one that they live in now, but the one before that.
Which, I mean, you could be right.
I think I am, but I could be wrong. But I think I'm
well,
right.
who was it showing as the exterior of whose home? Because Deborah and Frank and Marie, Ray and Deborah and Frank and Marie's are in real life across from each other in Long Island.
Right.
But you think Phil's perhaps Serrano house was?
Yes.
All right. I'm going to ask Phil, and he'll say, when did I live there? And I don't remember. That's usually Phil's answer.
Well, I remember. It's when they were little. So.
Okay.
But anyway, I could be wrong, but I think I'm right.
An excellent trivia question, Susan. I love it. Very hard to stump these fans.
I'll get a jammy Dodger if I.
A jammy Dodger, yes, as a treat, as a thank you. All right, Susan, always a delight. I'll see you again soon, and thank you so much. Goodbye, everybody watching.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for watching. This was fun.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, bye.
See you soon. Bye.